안녕 친구들. How have you been? I hope you've been well, and let's get started. Sorry about my hair. It was hot today, so I just pulled it back in a ponytail. But anyway, hopefully you still recognize my face despite the tight, severe ponytail or bun. Um, Episode 12 was really great. Let me go ahead and give you a quick rundown of what happened in episode 12, and then I'll go into my musings. Episode 12 picks up actually with a conversation that Tam Pyongjun has with Sojong, and that's where he finds out a lot more information about Kang Chi. One of the things, though, that he does find out is Sojong tells the concerned Tam Pyongjun, aka father of Yeol, that Yeol and Kang Chi are destined. Their fates are entwined, and he basically tells Tam Pyongjun what fate has started in motion, no human can stop. So, of course, having heard that, Tam Pyongjun goes to the military academy, and of course, that's when he realizes Chongjo's there and all of that stuff. But anyway, we pick up, they kind of fast forward through things. So Tam Pyongjun goes back to the military academy or a training camp, and then Kang Chi and Chongjo leave, and then they get ambushed, right? And so the story really picks up with Kang Chi being chained, and Tessel then comes and says, "I'm sorry, forgive me, Kang Chi, but I'm here to behead you." And then he takes off the bracelet because the head minion of Chogonum's little army had told him, "Make sure you take off the bracelet." Well, the fear in Kang Chi's eyes when, he knows that Tessel's going to take off the bracelet it's pretty profound, and I think he's more afraid of the bracelet being taken off than of actual death by Tessel, right? But anyway, when the bracelet goes off, Kang Chi morphs into Kumio, and everyone is just stunned. Well, Tessel and the head thug try to kill Kang Chi, and Kang Chi retaliates by clawing at Tessel's front chest, and so Tessel is bleeding a little bit. The thing to note, though, is when Kang Chi starts fighting people, he doesn't fight to kill. And so that's something different or that's a detail to note, because Kang Chi right now, remember when we first saw the Kumyo self and Sojong was concerned, telling Yeol to run because I think the beast has won. Well, this clearly shows that Kang Chi has some control over the beast, or the beast is, in some sense, has a sense of right and wrong, because he doesn't kill Tessel even though Tessel was coming at him with the purpose to kill. Neither does he kill any of the village thugs. So that says something about the humanity of the Kumyo beast. Well, anyway, as Tessel is on the ground, kind of fainted or whatnot, Kang Chi tries to tell Chongjo, it's me, and she just looks at me, she's like, "Get away from me, monster," and she throws stones and leaves and dirt at him. And so she ultimately faints, though, from the shock of it all, and so Kang Chi carries her back to his safe haven, and then, the thugs and Tessa are all on the floor, or on the ground. Well, by the time Chogonung's men come, they find Tessel gone, because Tessel had crawled away to escape, and the village thugs just coming up, and then they report to the Chogonung's men about Kang Chi, who morphed into this monster and all of these things, right? Well, two scenes then. One is in the cavern as Chongjo wakes up, and Kang Chi remembers that Chongjo, and remember, Kang Chi's still hurt from the altercation with Tessel and the village thugs, but Kang Chi remembers that Yeol had said, tell her the truth. You may never know. She may say, "It's okay, Kang Chi, I still love you. You're still Kang Chi." Well, Kang Chi then tries to tell her, and Chongjo just backs away, saying, "Oh my gosh," because number one, she's upset because she saw Kang Chi, monster form, try to kill her brother, Tessel. But then on top of that, she can't get beyond Kang Chi's altered appearance. And so she tells him, "You're not Kang Chi. You're just a monster." And those words really cut Kang Chi to the quick. And so he does nothing to hold her safe as she runs out of the cave. And he just howls in anguish. And that spurs Chongjo to run even faster out of the cave. into the forest. And so she just literally, runs around, and guess who should find her but Chogunung's men, of course, right? Well, the other thing that I wanted to juxtapose that scene with is the fact that as Chongjo is running away from the cave, we have then scenes of Yeol running to find Kang Chi and go towards the cave, because what happened was, after letting Kang Chi go without saying goodbye, she realizes that she should have at least said goodbye to him and wished him well. And so she and her faithful shadow Kwon follow in Kang Chi's wake, and that's how Yeol is aware that Kang Chi and Chongjo have been ambushed. Well, so we see Chongjo running away from the cave and Yeol running to find Kang Chi. And this very great, beautifully done juxtaposition of the two women and how different their characters are. Well, Yeol does actually get to the place where Kang Chi had beaten up and pretty much knocked unconscious the village thugs, and then she finds the bracelet. And so, she gets that bracelet for safekeeping, and then she goes off to try to see if she can find the place, his safe haven or cave. Well, she runs around pretty much in circles, and when they stop, Kwon's like, "We've been here before, mistress." And so she just kind of tries to collect her thought and tries to figure out how to get back to the cave. But as she does so, she fingers the bracelet, and she muses to herself and to Kwon how alone and how panicked Kang Chi must feel, because he no longer has the bracelet to turn him back into human form. Well, we go back to Chongjo, and Chongjo has been caught, of course, by Chogunung's men, and then the village thugs come, and then you find out that the Chogunung's men have also captured Taeseo. And by this time, Chogunung himself is here, because they heard word of the fact that they had escaped and all of this stuff. So Chogunung released a lot of his men to search the mountainside. Well, Chogunung number one, when he's there, finds out that Kang Chi, he suspects that Kang Chi is the son of Seowa and Hworyong. And then he sends the captured Taeseo to jail, and then he tells Chongjo, "I'll see you later tonight." And I'm just like, oh, But anyway, so Chogunung does all these things, and then he tells his head minion, make sure you clean up all loose ends, right? And so he takes off, and then the head minion pretty much gives the word to his men, and then they start killing all of the village thugs. And to me, don't get me wrong, okay? Don't think I'm bloodthirsty, but I think it was a really great wake-up call for Chongjo, who literally has still been living in this kind of sheltered world. And even up until this point, she's still kind of in that sheltered world mentality. But this is, I think, the beginning of it. Because what happens is, as she stands there being, ready to be escorted back, I guess, to the brothel, she sees Chogunung's men killing all of the village thugs. And the look on her face, and she doesn't know what to do with herself. I mean, she's seeing people murdered right before her eyes. So this starts really the beginning of her awakening into the real harsh world. She never understood it when Suyeon said, there are people who die way more pitiful deaths than you and who live way more pitiful lives than you. And now she's finally getting it. Well, Kang Chi back in the cave looks at his wrist again. He's like, I need to find that bracelet to try to see if I can revert back to human form. And so he goes back to the area, but he sees all the men dead. And I don't think it registers to him, because that's not of his concern. But he's searching for the ground. He's searching the ground for the bracelet, and he finds not the bracelet, but Yeol's scent. And he realizes, she must have my bracelet. Well, as he's about to go back to the military academy then to try to see if he can get that bracelet back, he hears the head village thug calling out for help, saying, "Help me, help me." And so Kang Chi turns back and he tells him, people like you, they deserve to die. All you've done is torment villagers, practice extortion, extort money from them, and just all sorts of things, right? And then the guy's like, please, please help me. And so Kang Chi, walks back, and he literally with purpose pulls out the head thug's dagger, and the guy's like, thinking Kang Chi's gonna kill him. And then Kang Chi takes the dagger, slits his palm with it, and then squeezes some blood back onto that wound. And, the guy's like, what are you doing? And Kang Chi's like, I don't know what I'm doing either, and I don't know if it's going to work, but I ended up healing someone, using this method, so we'll see. And then, because when the kumyo lights start coming and they heal, it saps a lot of the energy from the person. So the head thug loses consciousness. And then when he wakes up later that night, it's with the realization and the memory that Kang Chi healed him and that he is whole. And so he rejoices and such. Well, anyway, so by the time Kang Chi gets to the academy, it's pretty late at night. He tries to sneak in, but he eventually gets noticed. And so the guards are surrounding him. And it's so sad because he at first tries to hide his face because he doesn't want them to see him in his monstrous form. But eventually, he has no choice but to reveal himself. Tam Pyong-jun then comes out and he says to Kang Chi, what's happened to you, Kang Chi, that you would return in this monstrous form, right? And Kang Chi in his kumyo voice says, I need to see Youl. Please allow me to see Youl, right? And in the midst of this, one of the rash soldiers takes a sword and tries to kill Kang Chi with it. And Kang Chi instinctively flips him onto his back and then has like a death grip on his throat. And so, swords are drawn at Kang Chi, and then Tam Pyong-jun says, release him, or I'm going to have to kill you myself. And the irony is not lost on the viewer, Tam Pyong-jun, when he sees Kang Chi, he remembers that he killed Kang Chi's father as well, right? So anyway, it's a stalemate. Kang Chi's like, I need to see Youl, or you know what, tell them to withdraw their swords because he tried to kill me. Tam Pyong-jun's like, release him or I will kill you. So, long story short, into this tense scene, Tam Pyong-jun pulls out his sword. He's about to, get ready to strike. And then from the front entrance of the training camp, you hear Youl saying, no, father. And then she runs and literally puts herself between her father's sword and Kang Chi, right? And then she tells him, and there were some incredible sound bites in this episode, phrases that you think are just like very beautifully written and executed. But she says to her father, you taught me all my life that there are no bad people, only bad circumstances. And she's like, it's not Kang Chi's fault. He's just been caught in really bad circumstances. And the father, still remembering what Sojong said about how one of them may die, Youl or Kang Chi, right? He's fearing for his daughter's life, and so he tells her, back away. And she says no. And when she refuses, everyone gasps because it's a refusal on two parts. One is from a father to a daughter. Daughters don't refuse their fathers, especially during that time period. And she has just told her father, no, I will not obey. And then the second thing, though, is that Tam Pyong-jun is her military superior and she is his subordinate. And she has basically said, I will not obey your command. And so Tam Pyong-jun, everyone's stunned. And then she basically turns around, walks over to Kang Chi, and then holds his hand. And there's this beautiful scene I mentioned in the previous episode about the preview. There's this beautiful scene of Youl's human hand. Let me see if I can show it to you. And Kang Chi's kumyo hand like this, and she holds it like that, right? Well, what's then even better, because that shocks Kang Chi, and he looks at her because, she's the only person who's actually taken his side and who's treated him like a human being, or, someone who is a friendly person. And then just to make sure that no one separates them, she does this and she entwines her fingers with his, right? And as he calms down, then his eyes change back to human form, and then he's Kang Chi again without the aid of the bracelet. But before that, though, her linking of the hands like that, I wanted to kind of talk about the two significances of that, because number one is the human and the kumyo hand, so that in itself is pretty significant. But the second thing is that you have to remember, back in that time period, people did not show public displays of affection, and so the fact that she's holding his hand like that, it's a pretty loud statement of her affections toward Kang Chi. And to do it in front of her subordinates, her father, and all of that, it's pretty significant. Well, into this scene, what happens is Lee Soon Shin happens to be there, and he observes everything. And the reason why he was there is because he went over to chew out Tam Pyong-jun for, in essence, letting Kang Chi leave the compound, right? And Tam Pyongjun, anyway, into that scene, what happens is Cho Gon-eun then comes after his little, discovery at the mountain. And then he comes to Tam Pyongjun and he says, how is it that you have allowed Seowa to live for long and to allow that monstrous child to survive, right? And then Tam Pyongjun, they talk or whatnot, and then nothing really gets resolved, but Tam Pyongjun leaves with the resolve that they're going to have to be much more assertive in their treatment of or their dealings with Cho Gon-eun. And then Cho Gon-eun leaves with kind of the intent to make sure that Tam Pyongjun ignore, ruse, or regrets ever treating him that badly. Because what's funny is Tam Pyongjun gets ready to leave, and then he calls one of his guys, and he's like, "Throw salt," right? 소금 뿌려라, right? And which is actually a Korean thing for if you want to ward off like a bad presence or bad spirits or such. What you do is you throw salt on the ground as if you're like purifying or washing away the dirtiness, right? So basically it's an insult to Cho Gon-eun. But anyway, so that was why Lee Soon Shin was there, because Tam Pyongjun then goes back and says, "Sir, I think you should stay the night, just in case Cho Gon-eun left some, spies to check out what we're doing throughout the day," right? So that's why Lee Soon Shin is there. Well, he sees all of this, and the next thing you see is Kang Chi having this heart-to-heart conversation with Lee Soon Shin in a private, one of the private rooms. And, Kang Chi really pours his heart out. And, Lee Soon Shin said, "What happened?" And Kang Chi says, "Sir, the two people that I love the most, the ones that I thought were my family, betrayed me. One tried to kill me, and one threw stones and rocks and called me a monster." Right? And, he really, your heart goes out to him because he's just crying and he's lamenting the fact that he's neither full Kumil beast and he's neither full, nor full human, right? And he's like this half-half and he doesn't know where he belongs. And Lee Soon Shin is so incredibly awesome. He's definitely the mentor you want, because he tells Kang Chi, "I've told you this before and I'll tell it to you again. I have in my lifetime seen many humans who do not act like humans, who are in their behavior more monstrous than you will ever look," and stuff like that, right? And then he says, it's not important how people see you, right? So he gives really Kang Chi three pearls of wisdom. One is that the people who can hurt you the most are the ones that you love the most, because, they have the bigger impact and such. The second point, though, is he says it's not important how people see you, it's important how you see yourself and what you do with yourself. And then the third point was he tells him that any man needs only three things to be considered a worthy man, I guess, or to have a significant life. One is to have a bud, and I love the Korean word pod, right? But that he needs a best friend. And as he was saying this, I started thinking back to Woryong, and I was thinking Woryong had those three towards the end of his life. He had Sojung as his best friend, and then Lee Soon Shin says the second thing you need is a woman or someone who understands you, that you can share your heart with and share your life with. And Woryong for that short time had Seowa, and I'm thinking Kang Chi, you have Yeol, right? And then the third thing is he says that you need to have a purpose in life. And for Lee Soon Shin, that is to protect Korea. And he asks Kang Chi, what will you do with the rest of your life? What will your purpose be? Well, Woryong's was to become a human being so that he could live happily ever with Seowa and raise a family and all of those things. For right now, Kang Chi, his purpose as well is to become human. And I'm sure in the, residual effects of what, he'll help Lee Soon Shin and things like that. So those were the big main things. And Lee Soon Shin tells him, humanity is not what's in your blood, but it's what you do. That's what defines humanity, right? And so it's kind of cool because Yeol then becomes, she gets assigned by her father to be Kang Chi's personal mentor and, I guess, not babysitter, but she's supposed to guide him and like train him and things like that. And so she has him literally doing like counting beans and learning patience as a human being the next day, right? But when Kang Chi does walk out of that conference with Lee Soon Shin, and it's kind of late at night, he walks down the steps to find Yeol is still waiting for him. She's pacing, and then when she sees him, she runs up to him, and she's like, Kang Chi, are things okay? Are you okay? And he just looks at her, and because he says, well, no, before he said that, he's just looking at her, right? And then she says, oh, did he chew you out a lot? Did he rebuke you a lot? And she's, she's empathizing with him. And then Kang Chi just says, why are you so good to me? And he says, despite everything, you know, how is it that you're by my side? And Yoru just says, I just want to do anything for you. And that's what's in my heart. And her confession there is tantamount to basically publicly telling Kang Chi, I love you. And, you have my heart and all of this stuff, right? So anyway, that's the whole thing with Kang Chi and Yoru. The next day, though, what happens is as Kang Chi is about to go on with his day, he finds Tessel coming back into the military compound. And let me explain how Tessel returns back when he's supposed to be in jail. What happens is Cho Gon-woong that evening is about to, I guess, introduce Chongjo into the, world of, Kisang and stuff like that. But Chongjo refuses and she says, you're my father's enemy and all of this stuff. And Chung Kwon pretty much says, if you become mine, I will become yours. And he tells her, in order to live, if you have to throw things away, throw them away, right? Become mine and I will become yours, which gives her, if she can do it properly, some leverage to really wreak some havoc and revenge on Chogonung. But anyway, she still kind of refuses and she's, like very spiteful and things like that. And she says, I'm going to kill myself and all of this stuff. And Chogonung says, who's going to lament your death, right? Do you think your parents died for you? And he basically tells her things that Suryeon, the head mistress of the brothel, had been trying to tell her, but he finally gets through to her because he tells her, no one died for you. You can't live off of your father's name. In your state right now, you need to figure out how you're going to survive and how you're going to live. You yourself need to do that. And he says, your father, he didn't die for you. He died trying to save Kang Chi. Your mother, she didn't die for you. She died out of spite and all of this stuff, right? And so she says, yeah, and your brother, he's in jail and things like that. And so he says, I'm giving you an opportunity to to save your brother. So basically, he's telling her, if you sleep with me and become mine, then I will let your brother live. Well, the next morning, she straightens her clothes and then she's getting ready to leave. And of course, they bring Tessel in that early in the morning and she just glares at Cho Gon-woong and then she walks out without really answering Tessel, right? And Tessel realizes what's gone on. He's just in complete anguish and all of that stuff. And Cho Gon-woong says, hey, you know what? Enjoy it because your sister saved your life. And then he says, you still have a task for me. You need to go back to the military training camp and find out what those 5 Silver Young and Lee Soon Shin have to do with each other. And he's like, if you don't tell me the truth this time around, and it'll be your last chance, your sister's going to pay an even steeper price than, what she had to do today. And so, Tessel literally stumbles back to the training camp. And then he ends up talking to Tam Pyeongjun. He literally collapses in front of Tam Pyeongjun. And Tessel, Tam Pyeongjun is his mentor now, and Kang Chi is Lee Soon Shin's. Lee Soon Shin is Kang Chi's mentor. And I'm thinking to myself, great men, but I prefer Lee Soon Shin better, But anyway, Tessel's pouring his heart out, and he's saying, I always, admired my father. My dream was to become like my father and to gain his respect and all of those things. And he says that I find myself now not being able at all to do any of those, and I failed. I'm nothing like my father, and I'm so incredibly weak. I can't even protect the only family member that I have left, and all of this stuff, right? And Han Pyeongjun is trying to, comfort him and things like that. Well, Kang Chi hears this outside because he sees Tessel straggling back in, and so he follows, and he's just peeved because Tessel tried to kill him. There's that betrayal that's still fresh in his mind. And as Kang Chi turns to leave, though, he remembers Merchant Park's last words as Merchant Park lay dying in Kang Chi's arms, and how Merchant Park had asked him, please watch over Chungjo and Tessel, and then literally Merchant Park dies, right? And so in consideration for Merchant Park, as well as I'm sure Kang Chi trying to reach out in forgiveness to his best friend, he returns back, and as Taeseo is like weeping and all of that stuff to Pan Pyeongjun, Kang Chi comes and he says, are you this stupid or are you this pathetic? Stand up and, like, look at me. I'm still here and all this stuff. And Taeseo looks at him and he's like, oh my gosh, Kang Chi, what are you doing here, right? And Taeseo just won't look at Kang Chi. And so Kang Chi says, Taeseo, look at me, look at me. And then Taeseo finally does, and when he does, all the frustration and impotence that he felt and all the anger and helplessness, he takes it out on Kang Chi. And Kang Chi just lets him beat him up to a pulp. And when Yeol and Kwon see that, passing by, and they rush to help, Tan Pyeongjun tells him, like signals, let them be. And then so Taeseo finally, kind of exhausts himself, and Kang Chi just keeps taking the beatings, right? And then Kang Chi says, Taeseo, look at me. And Taeseo finally looks, and Kang Chi says, yes. Friends look at each other, face to face, eye to eye. Friends look at each other. And then once that happens, Taeseo just crumbles in, tears. And then he and Kang Chi reconcile. And then the next thing we see is the kitchen master talking with Tan Pyeongjun. And you realize that the kitchen master basically tells the viewers that Kang Chi's genuine forgiveness and love for Taeseo broke the enchantment. So Taeseo is no longer under the spell of the head minion of Chogunun, right? So that's literally how it ends. No, that's not true. I lied. So that, resolves the academy stuff, right? Well, Chongjo returns back to the brothel, and as she enters in of her own 2 feet, the veteran courtesans try to give her a hard time. And then Chongjo says, like a lotus flower, I have been reborn. And there's this beautiful symbolic like scene or a little clip of a lotus flower falling onto a pond. And she says, I've been reborn. And she says, people's fates can change, right? And she says, I wonder, I'm a newbie right now, but I wonder what will happen and how tables will turn when I have more power, or something to that effect. And then she walks in, leaving the veteran courtesans kind of stunned by the change. Well, Chongjo then seeks out the headmistress, who, gets a feeling that something awful has happened to Chongjo, right? Especially when Chongjo says, what you told me about seeking my own destiny, seeking my own dreams, is it true, and things like that. And basically what Chongjo is asking is, for her to teach her how to wield that type of power and how to become her own woman, which in some ways you're kind of like, finally, wake up and smell the, roses kind of thing. But at the same time, there is this sense of loss for her innocence. The theme of this episode was all about rebirth, because not only now is Taeseo reborn in a sense to forge his own destiny aside from his father's name, under his, away from his father's shadow. Same with Chongjo, right? And the funny thing is, the episode, I didn't mention this, but Yeol has been taught or raised by her father. Chongjo has been raised by her mother. And the difference in the two women are incredible, because Yeol in this episode particularly tells her father, Father, you've taught me X, Y, and Z. Whereas Chongjo has only been taught by her mother how to be a proper lady, sheltered, and not really thinking of any others. And her solution to any problem is, I'm going to die. Whereas Yeol's solution to any problem is, how do I live and fix this? Or how do I plan to, turn this to my advantage? So, when Tan Pyeongjun that morning, he's trying to ignore Yeol, and Yeol goes to try to smooth things over with her father, because the night before she had totally, in front of everyone, refused her father, disobeyed, and all of that stuff, right? So she's showing a little bit of ego, and she's like, Father, have you had your breakfast? Wow, you're really up early this morning, and all of this stuff. And Tan Pyeongjun tells her, I know that there's a chance one of you may die. And she tells her father, Father, you taught me to not live my life in fear. We don't know what the future holds, right? And she's like, you told me to live life courageously in the moment, and things like that. And just the juxtaposition of those two women, just incredible. But anyway, the other rebirth that we have at the end of this episode are two things, as we then see more evil forces coming into the series. Cho Won-young greets some foreigners, and it looks like it's an envoy from Japan. And the evil person who is in this, curtained little carriage is supposed to be the widow of this Japanese person, and she looks pretty evil. And then the other evil force that freaks me out personally, remember when Woryong died 20 years ago? The curse was that he was going to return as this cursed spirit or creature, right? For about 1,000 years or so. Well, I was hoping that when the mountainside covered him in greenery that it wouldn't be the case. Well, the camera focuses on the mountainside, which has gotten kind of darker. And the reason why we know something's going on wrong is because when Kang Chi that morning is counting the beans, right? Because Yo said this is one of your lessons on your way to becoming human. He's counting, and there's a scene where she makes him lose count, and she's like, sorry, and then he has to count again. Well, his sense of, I guess, safety or whatnot is disturbed because he senses a disturbance in nature's flow, if you will. And he gets up and he's wondering, what was that, right? Well, what it was the area that Woryong had been buried or covered by the greenery, it starts to turn brown. And the next thing you see are these eyes that pop open. And you know how Kang Chi's and Woryong's were green? These eyes are red. And that's how it ends, with Kang Chi's like face frozen, and or the camera or the episode ending on his face as he's trying to figure out what kind of disturbance he's sensing, and that's it. So, oh my gosh, 30 minutes, dang it! All right, that's it. I will end it here. I hope this was a good recap for you, that it made sense, and I will see you next week or maybe later this week when I do amusings. Take care, everyone. Bye.